All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about something incredible. A city built for thousands of people that was hidden inside another city. A place that had its own farms, its own power plant, even its own newspaper, all for a population that wasn't allowed to leave.
So let's get right to it. We're diving into the amazing story of the Colorado State Hospital. At its absolute peak, this wasn't just some hospital. It was a massive, totally self-sufficient city right in the middle of Pueblo, Colorado. We're talking more than 6,000 residents. And its story, well, it really mirrors America's wild, century-long journey of trying to understand the human mind.
Okay, take a look at this. This isn't a town. It's the hospital campus back in the 1940s. I mean, just look at the scale of it. It had its own power plant, huge dairy farms that were actually staffed by patients, and even an amusement hall for entertainment. The vision here was huge. It wasn't just about treating patients. It was about creating an entirely separate, perfectly ordered world for them to live in.
So how in the world did this city get so big? Well, it all started not with concrete and steel, but with this radical, almost utopian idea that came out of the 19th century.
I actually started pretty small back in 1879. Just 11 patients brought back to Colorado by train. But the growth from there, it was absolutely explosive. In less than 10 years, these enormous, almost palace-like buildings just shot up out of the ground, all built around a single, really powerful belief.
And that belief was called the Kirkbride Plan. The core idea was honestly revolutionary for its time. It was this: what if the building itself was part of the cure? The whole theory was that this grand architecture, these long, sunlit corridors, and this perfectly symmetrical design could actually bring order to a troubled mind. This was, quite literally, architecture as therapy.
So you had these incredible buildings in place, but what was it actually like to live inside them? For the thousands of patients who called this city home, daily life could be a world of some pretty stark contradictions.
Early on, life was all about structure and therapeutic labor. Working the farms, tending the gardens, all under very strict rules. But by the middle of the 20th century, the focus shifted, and pretty dramatically. It became more about building a real community, with recreation and a social life right at the center of it all.
And this self-contained world really developed its own rich culture. Get this, they were showing movies to hundreds of patients as early as 1912. They had a campus-wide sound system for music and news. And, maybe most incredibly, the patients published their own newspaper. It was called the 13th Street Review, and it was full of internal news, gossip, even patient-drawn cartoons. It was a genuine community.
But you have to remember, this vibrant community existed in a world before effective medications. So for patients who had the most severe conditions, that line between compassionate therapy and just forceful control, well, it could be terrifyingly thin.
As one staff member later put it, without medication, physical control was often the only option they felt they had. And artifacts that are now in the hospital's museum, things like restraint chairs and old straitjackets, they're a really stark reminder of that reality. They tell the other side of the story, the life for those who couldn't be healed by architecture alone. Then, starting in the 1960s, this entire system, this whole self-contained city, was about to be completely dismantled. It was nothing short of a revolution in care that would empty the wards and eventually bring bulldozers to those grand old buildings.
I mean, just look at these numbers. They tell a truly stunning story. After climbing for 80 years to a peak of over 6,000 patients in 1961, the population just suddenly cratered. In less than 2 decades, this city within a city was practically a ghost town. So what on earth could cause such a dramatic collapse?
Well, the collapse was really caused by a perfect storm. First, you have the arrival of new psychotropic drugs, medications that could finally, truly treat the symptoms of severe mental illness. This medical breakthrough then made a massive policy shift possible: decentralization. The new goal was to shut down the giant, isolated institutions and instead treat people in smaller, local community centers.
And this new policy literally changed the landscape. That sprawling, historic South Campus, with its iconic Kirkbride buildings, was slowly emptied out and then demolished, piece by piece. A smaller, more modern North Campus was built, but that original city within a city, it was effectively wiped right off the map.
So after all that change, what's actually left of that once enormous city? And what does its story teach us today? Well, the echoes of the hospital are still felt all across Pueblo.
Today, the hospital's memory is kept alive in a museum right there on the old grounds. And inside, you can find things like that patient-run newspaper, old record books, and artifacts that capture both the hope and the heartbreak of this place. Its legacy is, well, it's complicated. It's a story of economic impact on Pueblo, for sure, but also of the tragic discovery of unmarked patient graves on the former campus.
You know, in the end, the story of this hospital is a cycle, from idealism to overcrowding to reinvention. It's a really powerful reminder that while buildings can be torn down and policies can change, that fundamental challenge of how to build humane, effective systems to care for our most vulnerable citizens, that's one that never goes away. The Kirkbride walls are long gone, but the question they tried to answer is still right here with us today.